16.3, page 467. Open your book, 16.3, page 467. We're learning about human evolution. And we had gotten yesterday as far as Homo Habilis, the handy human. And so this is our little evolutionary tree that I'm drawing. And it wouldn't be a bad idea for you to know this. There is something similar to it in your book. But anyway, first we have the strepsirrhines. They go way back 60 million years ago. They're still around today like lemurs. They get a little bigger, a little smarter. You got the monkeys. They're still around today. That's the next thing that came about. The next thing that came about was the apes. Even bigger, even smarter. Then came an upright walking ape called Australopithecus. That's Lucy's type. Now Lucy's type, there are actually a bunch of them which the book talks about. There were the robust Australopithecines, which were big, fat ones. And there were the gracile Australopithecines, which were skinny ones. Lucy was one of the skinny ones. So there was a bunch of these types, but they all went extinct. Homo habilis was the bigger-brained tool user that came about and possibly drove these to extinction, outcompeted them for food. Homo habilis was smarter and better able to get food, and these things died out because they couldn't get enough food, because Homo habilis was taking it all. So this is what the Homo habilis skull and body would look like. There's a picture in your book of a Homo habilis. And Homo habilis tools. Tools are found everywhere these Homo habilis skeletons are found. And they're pretty good tools. And it would require a pretty good brain to make those tools. And they had skulls that had bigger brains inside them. Homo habilis brains were up around... The AP Bio book says 800 cubic centimeters, and your book says 650 cubic centimeters, somewhere in that area. Probably varies depending on the individual. So the next evolutionary step was something we call Homo Erectus. Branch off of this. Homo Erectus.
Where do they come up with these names?
The person who discovers them names them, and Erectus means something in Latin. It's always named in Latin, and I don't know what.
So is proconsul, that's Latin.
Is it?
Yep. Who discovered Homo Sapiens?
Homo Sapiens was named a while back with Linnaeus. Carolus Linnaeus did the modern classification system. So I will cover that next chapter.
Would these guys be considered like the caveman type?
We're not quite to cavemen yet.
Okay.
These were actually before cavemen. Homo Erectus. They evolved in Africa. Everything is still in Africa here. They lived from 1.9 million years ago to 0.3 million years ago. That's 300,000 years ago is when they went extinct. These were the first fire users. And their brains were bigger, about 1,000 cc's. So they were able to use fire. And we think they probably had clothes, because we find bones around the sites where these skeletons are found. If you dig them up, you find their skeletons, and you also find charred wood, which meant they were making fires. And you also find animal bones where you can tell the skins have been scraped off the bones. So they might have been using furs or coats. What's that?
Hats.
Or hats, yeah. Or whatever you want to wear to keep yourself warm. And so, a lot of times these organisms are drawn without hairy bodies. It shows a couple here without hairy bodies. If you have the brains to make fur coats, then evolutionarily you can be born with less hair and survive just as good as somebody born with a lot of hair. And so over thousands and thousands of years, we think hair went like vestigial structure, just like the tailbone. And indeed, even today, we only have the hair on our body is small and doesn't do a whole lot for us. So just like our tailbone and our appendix, hair is a vestigial structure. It's kind of disappeared over time because we don't need it, because we're smart enough to make clothes, and that's what keeps the warmth in. And we don't need the hair. So we think these people were the first to start making clothes. I can't really call them people because they weren't people. They were had some things in common with humans, but still not nearly as big a brain as us, and not as smart as us. Yes?
So, like, if a guy only wore shorts for his entire life, but he had more hair on his legs than
No.
a guy that
Because the amount of hair you have is something in your genes that you're born with. It doesn't matter what you do your whole life. But if you have a bunch of kids, some, because of variation, some will be hairy and some will not be hairy. Right? Because there's a normal amount of variation in your kids, and that's produced by meiosis. So, if all those kids can wear clothes, then the hairy kids actually have to eat more than the unhairy kids. Because the hairy kids have to make their hair. And they eat food, and some of the food goes to making your hair. So you actually have an advantage if you're not making hair. You see what I'm saying? You don't have to eat as much. So me and a guy standing next to me that's exactly like me in every way except he's real hairy, he's got to eat more than I do. We have the same advantage. His hair doesn't help him survive. We both can wear clothes. You see? So hair disappears over time in evolution. If food is scarce, people who are hairy are going to die out quicker than people who are not. Okay, the next step, so Homo Erectus, we see eventually go extinct. The next step we call Homo Erectus. And Homo Erectus were tall and they stood straight up. Now, up until now, all of these things, Australopithecus, Homo Habilis, Homo Erectus, all stooped a little bit. They walk kind of like this.
Hunchbacks.
But Homo Erectus was fully upright like we are.
He was erect.
Erect, yeah. And they migrated out of Africa. These were the first bipedal organisms to leave Africa. And they spread all throughout Europe and Asia. Why were they able to leave Africa and none of these other ones were able to leave Africa? Because the climate changed. There was desert up until a certain point. There was desert in between the grasslands and the little land bridges that lead into Asia. And these things wouldn't go through the desert. But the climate of the earth changed, and the desert became grassland, and so these things were able to go through the grasslands into Europe and Asia. So this is, you can see they have great tools. We have lots of skulls of theirs. And we think these were probably the first ones that could speak a language. Watch this video.
Over the course of millennia, the bipeds of Africa's great savannas became highly proficient walkers. About 1 million years after the appearance of Paranthropus robustus, another hominid had climbed a rung on the evolutionary ladder. Its fossils were recovered in 1984 from Lake Turkana in northern Kenya. At just under 6 feet, Homo erectus was tall and long-legged, with a physique and striding gait resembling modern humans. More than 2 million years after the emergence of the planet's first hominids, our ancestors walked much like we do today. Standing erect led to another pivotal evolutionary revolutionary change, the ability to speak. Earlier hominids, like Lucy, had walked with a slight stoop. With narrow throats and larynxes constricted by their posture, they could not produce the complex sounds that compose human speech today. When Homo erectus stood up straight, his vocal cords had much more room to reverberate sound. This anatomical adaptation would open a new avenue of verbal communication that would revolutionize human development. With double the brain weight of his older cousin Lucy, Homo erectus was undoubtedly a more intelligent being, but his capacity did not yet match the level of humankind today. It would take another 1,000,000 years for modern man to evolve.
So let me just put some of these up here that we've been talking about. Australopithecus were the bipedals, the first ones to walk upright. And now remember, everything after Australopithecus is also bipedal. Homo Habilis was the first tool user. And everything after Homo Habilis also uses tools. Homo Erectus, we think, started fire and clothes. Homo erectus, speech, and left after Africa. And spread through, after leaving Africa, spread through Europe, and Asia, and Australia. It even got to Australia. People think there was probably land bridges where they were able to get to Australia in the past.
Maybe they are really good swimmers.
Or they could have made boats. There's some evidence that these things, if Homo habilis was smart enough to make tools, Homo erectus might have been smart enough to make boats.
Maybe they're good swimmers.
Now, it's good. They could have been.
Good feet.
The Homo erectus that went into Europe, we think that's where skin color changed from black to white. Because if you're up in Europe, you don't need the black skin color to protect you from sun. So the Homo erectus that left and went into Europe, especially the northern parts of Europe, like Sweden and Norway, Finland, those types of areas, they probably lost their black skin color. Because black skin color takes food. It takes food to make the blackness of skin color. It's called melanin. It's a pigment. It's a protein. If you don't have to make that protein, you have an advantage if the black skin color is not necessary. So probably black skin color was kind of went away as organisms got further north. And so that's why they showed this Homo erectus as being kind of white skin color. Now, this is kind of a cool, your book talks about this one. On this island, it's called the Island of Flores, right above Australia, they found fossils of humans that were real tiny. The tallest ones were 3 feet.
So those are the hobbits?
The Hobbit people, they call them. The whole population was real small. Little people. I want one. They aren't actually people. They were Homo erectus. This is what they look like.
I don't want to do that. Looks like Medusa.
Wait, who's the guy to the left?
I don't know, one of them. What they do is they take the skulls and they use modern forensic techniques to put skin and muscles and hair and color on the skulls that they find. So both of these were made from skulls that they found, and they did that too.
Is that like a normal guy?
This is just showing how big they were compared to a normal person.
World class athlete.
Now, off into several groups. And by the way, scientists, I'm making this short and sweet and kind of easy for y'all for our testing purposes. But if you ever take a class in college, you will realize that every one of these there are more branches to each of these that have gone extinct. Different names. And they're not exactly sure where some of these organisms that they've studied, if they branched off from Homo Erectus or Homo Habilis. There's a bunch of these organisms living at the same time. So even in our book, it talks a little bit about these other branches. I'm giving you the major ones that you need to know for our test.
Evolution for dummies.
What's that?
You're giving us like the condensed version?
Yeah, the condensed version, because there's hundreds of these different species now. And if you're interested in this type of thing, take a course in anthropology in college. It's the study of human evolution. You can take an entire semester on it. Your mom's an anthropologist? So you know all about this stuff.
No.
No? Well, she knows all about this stuff. So anyway, branching off from Homo erectus, we get a branch that we're very interested in. One of them is called Homo Neanderthalis. Homo Neanderthalis. You've probably heard of these guys, Neanderthals. They lived between 200,000 and 28,000 years ago. They only went extinct 28,000 years ago. Just to give you an idea, about 5,000 years ago were the Egyptians and the pyramids and that kind of thing. So these guys are still away from that, but not too far away from that. They have a brain. They had a brain that was bigger than ours, 1,400 cc's. Ours is 1,350 on average. So the average Neanderthal had bigger brains than us. So we're not the biggest brain creatures that ever lived. But they did go extinct. They lived in Europe and Asia. Through the last ice age, there was an ice age that went from about 150,000 years ago to about 10,000 years ago. So the Neanderthals were living in that ice age in Europe, where it was snow and ice mostly. So they had to have, we know that they had big skins of mammoths and other animals that kept them warm, and they were real good at using fires, and they lived in caves. Now we're starting to talk about cavemen.
Did you say something like they could bring mammoths back alive or something? Didn't you say that?
Yeah, with genetic engineering they might be able to.
Awesome.
That would be sweet, wouldn't
Keep
it?
mammoths walking.
We know that they buried their dead with flowers and tools.
Yeah, they're cute.
They may have had religion. Here's a Neanderthal video.
The Neanderthals were the first humans to intentionally bury their dead. We have about 24 burials of Neanderthals, from little children to old adults, men, women, boys, girls. Burying a family member who dies, whether it's a child or an adult, says that you care about that person has a specific social role in the group, that person is important, and for the memory of that person, and to, in a sense, readjust the roles, the social roles of the people within that group, you go through some kind of a ritual, what we call a funeral.
Huh. I thought that was a different video. Oh, here's the one I wanted to show you.
That guy.
So these are Neanderthals, and Neanderthals were naturally incredibly muscular. They were all born like weightlifters that we see today. They all had huge muscles, and we think they had a bigger brain because their bigger brain was needed to control those muscles. One of the things your brain does is it controls your muscles for you. The more muscles you have, the bigger your brain has to be to control the muscles. So we don't think they had their bigger brain made them smarter than us. We think their bigger brain was used to control all their muscles, and that we were actually smarter than them. Yes?
Have you seen the movie 1000 BC or something like that?
I have not.
10,000 BC.
10,000 BC, I have.
Yeah, 10,000 BC.
I have seen
it
that.
It looks like the guy
Yeah.
in the picture looks like one of them.
Looks like him.
It was so boring.
Oh, they had necklaces. They had jewelry. this shows some of the jewelry. They had little holes there that a leather strap would have gone through.
Didn't the bottom right since that the guy from the mummy?
Yes, or one of them.
Here, watch. They rebuild a Neanderthal.
In 1856, a human skeleton was found in a cave in the Neander Valley in Germany. Its discovery began a century-and-a-half argument over the Neanderthals. At the turn of the century, archaeologists and collectors ransacked the cliff sites of southwest France, hunting for Neanderthal bones. The first attempt at a scientific study of this find from La Chapelle was a disaster and misled a whole generation. This 50-year-old Neanderthal's bones were deformed by arthritis, but they led a French scientist to declare that all Neanderthals were stooping hunchbacks with bow legs who couldn't walk straight. The image of the brutish caveman was born. How could such a pathetic creature have possibly survived the rigors of the Ice Age? In reality, scientists have begun a more realistic effort to flesh out the fossil bones. They're using the latest forensic techniques to bring us a true portrait of the Neanderthals, the same techniques police use to identify missing people. Medical artist Michael Anderson first needs his own copy of the La Chapelle skull. To do that, he's made a mold of the skull.
This is a 3-piece mold. The eye sockets out. And there's the cast. This exact copy of the original. And that's our final cast. The Neanderthal skull is similar to modern human skulls, and the measurements of the Neanderthal skull fit within the range of modern human populations. But there are some unique qualities to Neanderthal skulls, some of which is a low forehead and high brow ridges here. It also has a large nasal opening. This is characteristic of Neanderthals, and this recessed chin. They don't have a pointed chin like a lot of skulls do in modern human populations.
With the aid of a modern anatomy text, Anderson carefully applies clay to reproduce the exact shape of the muscles that were once attached to the Neanderthal skull.
The muscles on a Neanderthal skull are exactly the same as what you find in a modern human skull. Pathologists have determined that this individual was about 40, in his 40s, which is quite old for a Neanderthal, and he had 2 teeth left in the skull. And this led researchers to believe that he couldn't take care of himself anymore, and it just also points out that life was quite hard for the Neanderthals, and hence I tried to put in some of the gray in the beard, the salt and pepper look. But most likely this person would have had scars on his face and would have been beat up quite a bit, and this is a fairly pristine view of it. But I think that this portrait would have been recognized by members of the tribe, though, in the Neanderthal tribe.
And here is the entire Neanderthal, reconstructed by Anderson with the same meticulous forensic techniques. The ancient bones no longer give us an image of depravity and brutishness, but a startlingly familiar one of vigor and muscularity.
Huh. Cool.
Yeah, right.
So those were the Neanderthals, and the Neanderthals went extinct 28,000 years ago. And what's left? Well, our species, Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens first came about somewhere around 100 or 200,000 years ago, scientists haven't settled the debate yet. It's going on. They're trying to get more evidence. In Africa, a group came about that was particularly smart, particularly successful in hunting, we know, and could communicate very well between one another. And so would hunt as groups. Just like a football team acts as a group, a good team. Everybody goes to the right place at the right time. We know this group of these Homo sapiens hunted in groups, and were able to hunt better than anything before them. Everywhere they went, the Homo Erectus and the Homo Neanderthals went extinct as soon as the Homo Sapiens came in. The Homo Sapiens spread around Africa, and any of these that were left and these that were left, actually none of those were left. Any of these that were left and those that were left went extinct when the Homo Sapiens came. And when the Homo Sapiens went into Europe, all the Neanderthals that were there went extinct. And when the Homo Sapiens went into Asia, any Homo Erectus that were in Asia went extinct. And so wherever the Homo Sapiens were, everything else went extinct because we think the Homo Sapiens were good at, could outcompete them, could hunt better. And if you're trying to hunt for the same food that these guys are trying to hunt for, and they're better at it than you are, you're not going to have any food to eat.
Unless you were joining.
Yeah, why wouldn't the...
Yeah, maybe you would think maybe they'd join each other, and so there was a lot of time where it was thought that maybe the Homo sapiens mated with the Neanderthals, and what exists now are kind of a mix of Homo sapien and Neanderthals.
Is the Neanderthal?
That actually we know didn't happen because they have Neanderthal DNA that they found, and they compare the DNA of the Neanderthals to the DNA of the modern humans, and there's none of the Neanderthal genes present in our genome. So we don't think the Homo sapiens mated with the Neanderthals. It's possible that the Homo sapiens directly killed the Neanderthals, but we don't have any evidence. Yeah.
How could they kill them?
Yeah, would the Homo sapiens be smarter since the Neanderthals were like so muscular? and
Right,
stuff?
that's what we think. We think a lot of the Neanderthal brain went to using their muscles instead of communicating and working together and that kind of thing. And so we think that the modern Homo sapiens were better at that, and that's why the Neanderthals.
That makes sense.
Anthony, why are you got your head down? And your hood up. Sorry. Hood off, head up. So here's some of this. If you look at this tree that I have, here is the one that's in your book, and you can kind of flip this tree that way to make it look a little more like my tree. But anyway, this goes 5 billion years ago to present. A lot of the species that we've talked about. Here you notice they aren't making the connections of these trees because that is still debated what led to what. You can take a look at that more.
Homo erectus was longer than Neanderthals?
Well, what they think is that the Neanderthals came from the Homo erectus. So in some places, Homo erectus spread all through Europe and Asia. So Neanderthals were over here. We think that over here the Homo erectus evolved into Neanderthals in Asia. There were also Homo erectus over in Europe. The Neanderthals evolved. In Asia and Australia, Homo erectus still existed, living at the same time as Neanderthals in Europe. So they both went extinct at about the same time, Homo erectus and Neanderthals. It looks like it's a little sooner here for the Neanderthals. Anyway, so we call the earliest Homo sapiens that spread out of Africa and killed everything else off, we call them Cro-Magnons. Cro-Magnons are cavemen that are Homo sapiens, just like us. Meaning if we went back in time and grabbed a Cro-Magnon and set him in this classroom, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference by looking. He looks just like us. Cro-Magnons are us. Our ancestors.
We are.
We are Cro-Magnons. See that? You look at that. Now he's bald. They haven't put hair on him, but you put hair on him. Looks like us. It is us.
Like Indians.
They call them Cro-Magnons after a fossil location in France. We have a 1,350 cc brain average. That's average. Some people have bigger brains than that, and some people have less. That's our average. Very good at hunting, language, culture, art. If you ever see cave art, it was made by these guys.
Stick figures.
Cave art. Naked lady carrying baby.
Calm down. Good job.
They range across the coastal hills and along the seashore.
No, we don't want to see that.
What?
Cave art by Cro-Magnons.
Would that be a buffalo?
Is there writing behind the buffalo?
This shows how the Cro-Magnons spread. They started in Africa. This number is debated on. It might go back to almost 200,000 years ago. But then they spread all throughout Africa, and then they just came out. They go to Europe. The Neanderthals go extinct soon after that. They go to Australia. Those Homo Erectus down there go extinct. They go to Asia. The Homo Erectus there go extinct. They even crossed to North and South America about 20,000 years ago and inhabit those areas. And when Christopher Columbus comes over on his voyage, there's already people there. These guys that had spread out many years before, and we called them Indians. They lived all in this area and down here.
Bro,
Yes?
can you go to the picture of the buffalo one more time? Is there writing behind the buffalo?
Writing?
Top right. Keep moving to the right, down a little. See the one?
Here?
yeah.
Is that writing?
Yeah.
Typing over.
Says
Cro-Magnon. Something.
Oh, right here,
Something
yeah.
painting.
Cro-Magnon cave painting.
Oh.
I still don't see it, but okay.
Yeah, that was something that they put on the slide.
Okay. That's pretty.
The Neanderthals didn't do cave painting. Just the Cro-Magnons. That's why we think the Cro-Magnons were smarter. There was part of the brain going to being creative. That's the oldest handprint in the world. Maybe like a 20,000-year-old handprint. A king that they buried that had pearls all over him. They found Cro-Magnons buried in the ice, still with skin on them.
What?
Cro-Magnon art,
Maybe that was the guy.
fishing spears, naked lady statues.
What the heck?
Cro-Magnons like naked lady statues.
Big naked ladies.
Yeah, that's what used to be. That's what was beautiful back then. Because if you were skinny, you would die soon because you haven't eaten enough food.
What's that one on? That's
Only
that
the
one
fat
with
girls were the
right?
ones that were beautiful because they were going to live.
Very old, Taylor. Very old.
There's a human family tree. So, if you hear scientists say, here in the popular press, whatever, please pay attention. If you hear humans evolved from apes, the first thing you get in your head is, oh, we got an ape? And then all of a sudden we got a human. That doesn't seem possible to me. That's where some of the problems came in. Humans, which are Homo Sapiens, didn't come from apes directly. There were steps. Australopithecus, Homo Habilis. Rudolph Fensis, we didn't talk about this one, but it's in the AP book. Homo Erectus, Homo Erectus, Neanderthals, and modern humans. It's a step-by-step process. And if you were to take all of these skulls and put hair and skin on them, they would look like this. And if you look at these steps, starting with the ape, yeah, Australopithecus does look a lot like an ape. And Homo habilis does look a lot like an Australopithecus, but a little different. In different steps along the way, that makes more sense. And this is the evidence. This is why people say humans evolved from apes. Because it looks like they did looking at the fossils. That's the evidence. Now, you don't have to believe it. You can say, I don't believe any of that. But if you're going to convince others that humans did not evolve from apes, you have to come up with evidence that overturns this. So that's the section on human evolution. Read it. It's on the test. Section 16.3 is tonight, or for this week. Have a good Thanksgiving. Peace out.